A little more money.
But I can't let you do this.
Then stop now.
9 Supes from the boys comics that haven't appeared on the show yet. The fans who have read the comics and watched the live-action show on Amazon Prime are patiently waiting and anticipating the debut of several superheroes, or as they are called, Supes, in the future seasons of the series. It is a known fact that this series loves dark themes, darker than people are usually used to, especially in a superhero or science fiction series. The question remains, just how sinister can this show get? And if they're looking to get more sinister, they have plenty of characters that they choose from. The comics have introduced several Supes, all inspired by the Marvel and DC comics, and have managed to turn them into dark, sinister characters who are unhinged and up to no good. In this video, we will explore the 9 maniacal and diabolical Supes from the boys comics who have not yet made an appearance in the live-action show. Let's get ready to rumble, shall we? What's up, guys? This is the V. Welcome back to Marvelous Videos. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin.
From the 7, Jack from Jupiter.
Hello, Earthlings. Cheerio. Thank you.
Number 1, Jack from Jupiter. Jack the Jupiter was created by Vought American, had a tan skin color just like the planet Jupiter, and fashioned a red cape. Despite his status as a longtime member of the world's most successful super team, the 7, his lack of star appeal and major powers resulted in him being seen as fairly unimportant to his corporate sponsors, teammates, and even the boys. Jack took A-Train under his wing when he was a recruit, and even he failed to create an attachment of any sort with Jack, along with a lack of sympathy when Jack met with certain misfortune, just like his fellow teammates. However, comic readers never felt much sympathy for this character either, because he was far from a decent individual, often labeled as a sex-crazed, racist, homophobic creature. Jack has always been aware of the violent crimes caused by the Supes and shows no remorse. Instead, he treats them as jokes, severely downplaying the incidents. He isn't as strong as the rest of his teammates, but does possess superhuman strength and can fly through air weightlessly and has great control over his speed and force. Jack uses the word Carpo, which grants him superhuman invulnerability in the form of a red toned force field that surrounds his body, but this isn't permanent as it eventually ceases to exist, leaving him vulnerable. In the entire process, it is extremely painful for him too. Although he has these powers, he doesn't have any official training that helps him use these powers correctly, which always leads to disaster situations. Another one of his weaknesses is the lack of superhuman durability, so without the temporary force field, he is just as vulnerable as any other human being, and can be killed easily. Since most of the superheroes have been inspired by DC and Marvel, Jack the Jupiter is a twisted and bizarre version of DC's Martian Manhunter, and was bizarre enough to be cut out of the show completely. He is eventually killed by Billy Butcher in the comics, ending the reign of one of the most ridiculously evil characters the comics has ever created. Number 2, Tek Knight. This character is a founding member of the supergroup Payback. Tek Knight is one of the few Supes who doesn't have any superpowers and solely relies on technology instead. In recent years, because of a brain tumor, he developed a psychological problem that led him to have spontaneous sexual relations with both living creatures and inanimate objects. Although he is a minor character in the comics, he might be an important character in the future of the series. Tek Knight's character pays homage to DC's Batman and Marvel's Iron Man, as his entire being revolves around technology and not Compound V, separating him from the rest of his teammates and Supes in general. Although he hasn't appeared in the live-action series yet, he has been mentioned briefly, which could only mean the producers and writers were setting up his character for the future. There are speculations that his character might be reimagined for the series, making him the stereotypical billionaire with tech, maybe closer to Elon Musk, or again, drawing more inspiration from Tony Stark. Nonetheless, it would be interesting to see the boys put up against someone who doesn't have any superpowers and relies mostly on his intelligence and tech, challenging the core idea of the series. Tek Knight's death in the comics is a rather disturbing one, and this may never be translated to live action, as he died saving the planet from an asteroid by having sex with it, which caused it to explode. Apart from this, fans look forward to seeing this parody of Batman on their screens eventually, despite being one of the most controversial Supes so far. Number 3, O-Father. O-Father is one of the minor antagonists in the comic book series, and this character is a religious superhero who is also the organizer of Capes for Christ and is extremely corrupt. He is first seen as Capes for Christ, where he's praying with his helpers when Homelander shows up telling him to do something about his addiction to his young sidekicks, who O-Father sexually abuses, setting the benchmark for just how sinister an antagonist can get in this series. Eventually, Homelander makes him an offer where he would help O-Father take over the world, and despite his shock and reluctance to this offer, he agrees to it. Since O-Father is a Supe, he has the superpowers that most Supes possess, ranging from superhuman durability, strength, and agility to the power of flight. However, his durability, although a part of his powers, isn't as strong as the other superheroes as shown in the comics. With the help of his powers, O-Father and the other Supes protect Homelander when he attacks the White House, and when the Air Forces come in, he commands the others to stay calm and attack, but is soon murdered by the military when a rocket explodes. This character is very dark and sinister, and although the live action does have a fair number of sinister characters, it is only a guessing game as to just how sinister they might go. In the TV series, Ezekiel is a similar character to O-Father, but not nearly as dark. Fans might like to see more brutal characters going forward in the series, however, these characters' deaths must also be just as horrible as they are. O-Father's future in the live-action series is currently uncertain. Number 4. G-Men. If the name hasn't given it away yet, G-Men are a parody of the X-Men from the Marvel Comics, and the spoof isn't even very subtle, as they have directly copied certain elements from it, especially the main characters of the G-Men. They are essentially a group of superheroes founded by John Godolkin and consists of orphans and outsiders with super abilities. Does that sound familiar yet? This team is the most profitable one after the 7 under Vought International. Unlike the 7, G-Men are a more elaborate franchise with several spin-off teams such as G-Force, much like the X-Men, who also had a team called X-Force. The members of G-Men are Groundhog, 5-0, Critter, the Divine, Nubia, Silver Kincaid, and Stacker, and together make one of the most despicable teams from the comics. Their leader is the exact opposite of Charles Xavier, given the fact that he is a sociopath, narcissist, and molester. We know that the series has no qualms when it comes to dark subjects and portraying them in the series, so there is a possibility that G-Men might eventually be a part of the live-action series too, especially because of the small Easter egg related to them in Season 2, which hinted to the Me Too movement hinting at sexual misconduct. Apart from their possible appearance of them in the series, taking a deeper look into the members of G-Men, we have Groundhog, who is a former bank robber and superhero and is very skilled with using hammers. Moving on to Nubia, who is married to the Nubian prince and possesses the ability to create powerful electrical blasts. Silver Kincaid, or Grace Wilhelm, was born in Cranbrook, North Massachusetts, and her superpowers include telekinesis and telepathy. Stacker is the taciturn member of the group and is made of shiny, dark-colored metal and is calmer and reserved as compared to the others. All the members of the G-Men are very different from each other and have their traits and powers, which would make them an interesting addition to the live-action series. Number 5. Team Titanic. Team Titanic was created by Vought American, and their main goal was to appeal to the teen market. They are powerful but lack focus, which leads to Vought disbanding them now and then reassembling them every few years, and then finally using them as cannon fodder. This team is based on DC's Teen Titans, and in a nutshell were probably some of the most useless superheroes to have existed in the comics, and the most short-lived too. The team includes Dry Hump, based on the infamous Zatanna, and Regina Dentata, based on the fan-favorite Raven, along with some other members who weren't as important to the plot or their storyline in the comics. Of all these characters, Muzzletop is probably the worst by far, as he uses his reverse speak in unsavory ways, a trait which was again taken from Zatanna's character in the DC Comics. The team also has their tower, which is similar to the Titan Tower, but is called the Star Tower. Most of them are eventually killed by the female, one of the original members of The Voice in the comics, as she slices Muzzletop's head off his body and rips out Dry Hump's spine. This was an incredibly gruesome scene in the comics, and by the end of it, the only remaining members were Starlight, Jimmy the One, and Gumchum. Team Titanic only had a handful of appearances in the comics, and it is unlikely that they will survive for more than an episode or two should they ever appear in the live-action series. Number 6. Groundhog. As mentioned before, Groundhog is a part of the G-Man and is truly one of the most feral and mindless Supes to ever exist. There's little to nothing revealed about his past, so it is assumed that just like his other team members, he was abducted as a child and given Compound V, which led him to being trained to be a Supe as well as the leader of the G-Man. Groundhog has hammer hands and the inherent and animalistic need to kill people. The hammer hands and his inability to speak are potential side effects of Compound V, and he has to often be fed by his teammates as he can never use his hands for normal day-to-day tasks. However, instead of food, he would rather eat his enemies and victims alive. He possesses superhuman durability, which helps him withstand fatal wounds and prevents him from dying, but overwhelming firepower can kill him, becoming his weakness. His hammer hands are probably his biggest asset, as he can use them to smash people's heads, killing them with ease. He suffers from severe anger issues and has been based on Wolverine's character. Just as much as people love Wolverine, they hate Groundhog, and they even share a similar pointy-eared costume. Groundhog also appears in The Boys Presents Diabolical, which is an animated anthology and spin-off series based in the same universe as The Boys, and he didn't disappoint the fans once. His future in the live-action universe is uncertain, but if there was anyone from the G-Man making a debut in live-action, it would most likely be him. Number 7. Silver Kincaid. This character has a very brief role in the live-action series, however, they portray her very different from the comics. Silver Kincaid is a minor character and an anti-heroine in the comics. When she was a child, a pony she was riding on went crazy and ran 5 miles before her father caught them, which caused her hair to go white overnight from shock. She lived in Cranbrook and she was kidnapped by John Godolkin, the founder of the G-Men, and was injected by Compound V and trained at his facility. Just like the rest, she was often sexually abused by John himself, causing her a lot of traumas, which affected the state of her mental well-being. Her mother eventually died of cancer, and her father committed suicide. Kincaid was a member of the G-Men, which meant doing John Godolkin's dirty work and covering up any crimes and killing countless amount of people. Her experiences only made her weaker mentally and caused severe depression, which caused her to have a mental breakdown and take her own life using her superpowers. Her abilities were always slightly different from the rest of the Supes, and she possessed a unique type of telekinesis that allowed her to crush people and objects. She could almost manipulate the energy around her, and her powers seemed mostly psychic and gravitational, and much like the other Supes, she also possessed superhuman strength and ability. As they have already introduced her in the series and nothing like she was in the comics, it is unlikely that we will get to witness her storyline in the future. Number 8. Blarney Cock. His real name is unknown, however he was the son of the legend and Queen Maeve, but was raised in an Irish orphanage through the offices of Vought. He was recruited and shipped to the US after his powers manifested. He was a part of the superhero group called Teenage Kicks and continued to rise in the ranks along with his friend and fellow Supe, Whack Job. Teenage Kicks eventually ended up in a fight against the Boys where Wee Huey punches out Blarney Cock's viscera, being unaware of his potential and enhanced strength. Blarney Cock was one of the recipients of restoration of sorts assisted by Compound V, but it wasn't long until he was killed again by Wee Huey himself. Blarney was one of the stronger Supes and also stronger than most members of the Teenage Kicks. He possessed enhanced athleticism, durability, reflexes, senses, speed, strength, and stamina. Along with these enhanced features, he also had a sonic scream and sharp claws, with accelerated regeneration and the ability to fly. Beyond all this, much like other Supes, Blarney was just a terrible person. He often took hard drugs and participated in team orgies. Perhaps if Queen Maeve played an active part in his life, he wouldn't be half as bad as the person he is in the comics, but sadly that wasn't the case. If the live-action series introduces Blarney Cock, that would mean introducing the entire Teenager Kicks, which could be an interesting addition to the plot, but might segue from the story, so maybe there's room for them in a potential spin-off series. Number 9. Mr. Marathon. This character was the original speedster of the 7, however, he was replaced by A-Train before the beginning of The Boys. One of his main abilities, just as his name suggests, is super speed. However, it was implied that he was kicked off the 7 team for becoming slower. Mr. Marathon is known for being the forgotten super, and just like this past, his future in the comics or shows also remains a mystery. However, what is known is the fact that Mr. Marathon had the same hedonistic tendencies as the other Supes, as he and Lamplighter got into mischief at Vought Tower by sneaking in college girls through the back door. His career at the Seven was extremely short-lived, and he was replaced by A-Train, who lasted for 4 years longer than he did. The comics revealed Mr. Marathon's dark fate as he was accidentally killed by Homelander on a mission during the 9/11 crisis, and his head was separated from his body. The fact that everything about him is such a mystery could be bought into the live-action universe, not only to kill everyone's curiosity, but also by going a completely different route with the character and what had happened to him. If you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe.
By the many moods of my homeworld, Galaxis has returned once more.
But the